Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. John Keir with you as always, and joining me is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hey guys, it's been a while.
It sure has, Austin. It is June 12th, Season 4, Episode 16. It's our first episode in over a month. The last time we talked Steelers football, it was just after the draft. And, quite a lot has happened. For a quiet period in what is typically the dead part of the NFL season, or off-season, if you will, there's still been a good amount going on. And one surprising bit of news, let's just jump right into it. The Pittsburgh Steelers draft picks all got signed right away, and part of that is because of where they were drafted, particularly Devin Bush. You might remember Terrell Edmunds didn't get signed until just before training camp, but as a matter of fact, he got signed a lot earlier. He got signed still in May, as a matter of fact. Not even June. He got signed in May, and Justin Lane signed just at the end of May. So all of the Steelers' rookie draft picks were signed prior to the flipping of the calendar to June, which is something we're not accustomed to.
Yeah, the language was just so much easier for the first round pick. Obviously, Devin Bush was the 10th overall pick, which the Steelers aren't used to having such a high pick. I believe the last time they had that high of a pick, it was for Plaxico Burress all those years ago. So, it was just easier with all that language because they just literally said, here, take this money. It was a fully guaranteed $18.8 million contract, so there was really no negotiating for it. They just said, it's all guaranteed, that's it, let's be done. And it was done really quickly. But it was definitely a change of pace. Like you said, we waited for Terrell Edmunds. It was very, very long. Edmunds went much longer than I even liked. I wasn't worried about it because, I knew it was going to happen. But, I usually like the picks done in just, mid-June, around now. Around now is a good time to get it done. But, Edmunds went all the way to the end of June, from what I remember. It was, but this was good. Justin Lane was the last one to sign, and he signed May 31st. All the draft picks were signed before June. I don't remember the last time that happened for the Steelers. That was amazing.
Well, the biggest reason for that, you kind of touched on it, the guaranteed contract for Devin Bush. All the top 10 picks in the draft get fully guaranteed contracts, so that made negotiations really easy. And Plaxico Burress, you are correct, in Kevin Colbert's first draft in 2000 with the 7th overall pick. That's the last time the Steelers picked in the top 10. Another draft pick, a former draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 7th round, Keon Adams, was cut by the team after rookie minicamp and has since signed with the New York Giants. Any thoughts on that?
I'm just wishing him the best since he's in the NFC and on what looks like a dumpster fire team. I'm just wishing him the best. I hope he has a chance of making it, which he probably does because the Giants are so bad.
The drafting of Sutton Smith really looked like it signaled the end here for Adams, a guy that just never could put it together after suffering injuries. He did stick around for a couple of years, but once Ola Adeni broke out last season as an undrafted free agent, it really pushed Adams to the back burner, and especially when you add Sutton Smith, there really wasn't room for him anymore. Let's shift gears here. Go ahead.
Sorry.
After you.
Okay, yeah, you never know, really. When a player gets hurt for a full year, as obviously with Keon Adams' first rookie year, he was sat on IR the entire year, and you didn't get to really see it. He probably could have been cut earlier. The Steelers just didn't know what they were getting. I mean, it's basically like a free roster spot to let a guy just sit on IR, so he could have been gone earlier if he got to play.
Let's shift gears here. The Steelers have hired 2 former players in David Johnson and William Gay to be coaching interns during the remainder of the offseason and preseason schedule. This shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Both former players were seen working with the Steelers coaches at OTAs and now recently mini camps. David Johnson is working with the tight ends, and William Gay is actually working with the wide receivers, believe it or not, even though he was a defensive back during his NFL career. But it's not that confusing just because of the fact that you think about it. William Gay was a really cerebral and he was a player that studied a lot of tape. And what you're looking at when you're a cornerback is tape of wide receivers, so he knows a lot about wide receivers, obviously, because he watched so much tape, and the same goes vice versa. So I don't think it's that surprising. Maybe I just would have expected him to be working more with the defensive backs a little bit anyways.
Yeah, but I like it. I feel like when you get your enemies' perspective, I say enemy just because it's the other side of the ball, it's the guy you're going against. I feel like that's a good thing. Like, it's getting an insight on what you should be doing to beat the guy that you're up against. It's not going to help you with like the catching and the breaks. I will some of the breaks. It depends. It's not going to help you with the catching portion. But what William Gay is going to tell you is, yeah, when a cornerback is set like this, you can do this move and get around them this way, or when they open up their body this way, you can do that. I kind of like that. I like with the opposites. And with David Johnson, I think David Johnson's always been a really good blocking specialist, so he should be good for the fullbacks and tight ends in that department. Even though I feel like the fullbacks and tight ends are actually decent blockers. Xavier Grimble's a pretty solid blocker. Vance Donald's a very good one. Roosevelt Nix is a killer blocker. But he's still David Johnson was always a good blocker, and that's what he was known for. So I like that coaching hire as well.
The whole kind of what is your enemy, your opponent thinking? It calls to my memory the Von Miller camp that he had for pass rushers, and I think they had Doug Flutie come in, and he played as like a de facto quarterback, and he basically talked to all the pass rushers, kind of giving them insight into what's going through a quarterback's mind when they see certain things. And I think that's a very good way of comparing what William Gay is going to be doing with the Steelers wide receivers. And again, these interns, we've seen Hines Ward be a coaching intern in the past. They usually only last through the preseason, so this is not a permanent thing throughout the whole season. So,
oh yeah,
I had mentioned previously it's now June 12th, and we're through 2 days of mini camps. We're done with OTAs. Tomorrow's the last day of mini camp. And then we've got a break until training camp. As a matter of fact, I forgot the Steelers training camp schedule has been released, Austin. Would you mind checking up for me when that begins?
Sure.
So with that being the case, we're almost through the longest part of the NFL offseason prior to training camp. And based on early reports, it is just the football and shorts period, if you will. But I've heard a lot of good things about Deontay Johnson in particular. He's someone that has really stood out to my knowledge from what I've seen. I don't know if you've seen that or if you've seen anyone else that's been standing out in a good way.
I heard Joe Hayden talk about Deontay Johnson, saying he's a good one, which is always good to hear. I mean, at this point, with how the Steelers draft wide receivers, I kind of just expect it, and it's really disappointing, even if it's a late-round guy and they're not doing good. But I feel like that's a good sign. The Steelers needed that. And funny enough, the only other guy that I've heard really good things about is another wide receiver, and that's Dante Moncrief. I've heard that he's excelling as well in his new role, and he might be a player that's finally pushed over the edge. And to me, Dante Moncrief always looked like that guy that was just like one step away from being a really good wide receiver. Like with Andrew, he wasn't in Jacksonville, but I don't blame him for that. But when he was with Andrew Luck, I thought he was like, this receiver is really good. I thought he was going to be a good receiver. He just never really broke that margin, that line. I feel like he could push that this year. I heard good things about him, but regardless, I have the training camp schedule. So all players are going to report by 4 p.m. on July 25th. That's going to be the first day, but that's not the first practice. Friday, the next day, is the first practice, and from July 26th to July 29th, they're going to be having practices open to the public. Then July 30th is another off day, and then basically they come back again, and July 31st, August 1st, is going to be more open to the public. Friday, August 2nd, they go to Latrobe Memorial Stadium to practice. That one's a later one at 7 p.m. compared to the other ones that are at 2:55. Back to the open to public on August 3rd. August 4th, they're at Heinz Field. Then August 5th, they get another off day. Then August 6th through 8th, August 6th through 7th, they're going to be more open to public camps. August 8th is going to be a practice not open to public, and then August 9th we have the first preseason game. So that's the short breakdown of the Steelers training camp schedule. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's right around the corner, just over a month away, with it being July 26th.
6 weeks from Friday is how it's shaping up. So until then, though, we'll only have just tomorrow and anything that pops up until then. But some news from OTAs. You know, your former San Diego Fleet cornerback and wide receiver Cameron Kelly got first team reps at free safety because of a minor injury to Sean Davis, and the team didn't feel it was necessary to rush him back, obviously. So let's segue into talk about Cameron Kelly and some other questions on the roster. So let's not kid ourselves. Maybe besides tight end, the safety position might be the thinnest on the Steelers team. I mean, you've got your starters and Sean Davis and Terrell Edmonds, and you've got a potential nickel answer in Marcus Allen, and then you've got a question mark at a potential number 4 safety. Maybe Jordan Dangerfield, maybe it's PJ Locke, maybe it's Cameron Kelly. I don't even see it being possible the Steelers keep 5 safety. Is it even possible Cameron Sutton or Brian Allen gets moved there? There's a lot of question marks when you get beyond the first 3 guys at safety for Pittsburgh, and I think it's really anyone's game right now.
Yeah, this might be one of the positions that Colbert makes one of those like small moves, like the Ryan Switzer moves of the world, or the Justin Gilbert moves, where like one of those tiny moves where you just bring in some other guy to compete. Justin Gilbert didn't work out. I would say Ryan Switzer did, but I feel like this is going to be the position, if there is any, that he does that, because the safeties aren't very great. Sean Davis, I don't even really know where to rank him. It's like a big debate among Steelers fans whether Sean Davis is actually okay or he's bad. Some people think he's good. I don't know. Like I teeter on the line. Like I think I've said this on the podcast before, but now what's ingrained in my head is a San Diego game where he just kills Joe Hayden, knocks him out for a play, which gives up the touchdown. The ball goes straight into Keenan Allen's hands because he dislodged the interception. And then because he knocked Joe Hayden out, Artie Burns comes on, and immediately the 2-point conversion goes to Artie Burns, and it's completed to Antonio Gates. Like, and I blame this all on Sean Davis in my head, which I guess it's not fair. It's like one play, but it's ingrained in it. So like I lean towards Sean Davis is not good. He's just below average, I guess I should say. So I don't know. So I'm going on a rant here, but all I'm trying to say is Sean Davis is not a guarantee. He's not that good. Terrell Edmonds, I feel like, should step up in his sophomore year. He was thrown into the fire last year, and I thought that even though he was thrown into the fire, he didn't start off well, but he ended pretty good. He ended averagely, and that's basically all I could ask for. I wish for a little bit more involvement. That was my biggest complaint with him last year. He wasn't getting involved in plays. He was kind of just sitting around and staying back and not really doing as much tackling as I want. But I'm hoping for more in this next year. I think he should be fine. But like you said, after that, it's just kind of rough. Marcus Allen he hardly cracked the roster last year. He was just kind of a game day inactive for most of the year. So it's like, I don't know what to think of him. Jordan Dangerfield is okay as a backup, but like it could be better. It's just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan. And then Cameron Kelly, I want to say I love him, but he was really good as a corner in the AAF. When Cameron Kelly was in the AAF, I don't know who watched the AAF or not, but he won Defensive Player of the Week for one of the weeks because he had 3 interceptions in the game. So he makes sense as a guy that the Steelers brought in from the AAF because he was really good at turnovers. He actually started as a wide receiver in the AAF, and I think I've said this before as well. But so he has flexibility to maybe come on offense and be a trick play guy. He can play corner. I definitely saw him play corner, and that's where he excelled. And then he played safety in high school and college, from what I remember, at San Diego State. So, so maybe Cameron Kelly might be that like guy that sneaks on the roster, that Ola Adeni that just surprised everybody. But I don't know. I'm not very happy with this safety group. I feel like it should be the position that Colbert makes that like Ryan Switzer type trade for. But what do you think about the safeties that we got going into this year? Do you think that they should bring in another guy? Maybe there's a free agent that you like. Maybe there's maybe you want a trade to happen. I don't know who to trade for. I'll be honest with you. I don't really know who I would think that the Steelers should target. That it's going to be like a nice cheap option. But what do you think?
Well, let's ask ourselves a question. Is there a natural free safety on this roster? I think you'll find the answer is no.
No, there's not.
because Sean Davis is a converted strong safety. Actually, he's a converted slot corner to a converted strong safety to a converted free safety. Terrell Edmonds is a strong safety. Jordan Dangerfield can play free safety, but he's really more of a box safety. And Marcus Allen's more like a dime backer, strong safety type of guy. So, I mean, you've got makeshift players at free safety. And P.J. Locke, from what I understand, is more of a box safety as well. I guess the one thing Cameron Kelly has going for him is that he can wear all those hats. I don't know if it'll result in him making the 53, but I certainly think he has a chance to make the practice squad. I don't like that there's not enough. This is the problem last year. There's really nobody behind Sean Davis that can be a solid free safety. If he goes down, Jordan Dangerfield can play, but you don't want Jordan Dangerfield playing a lot. He's a good special teams player, but, I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time the Steelers had a good free safety? Was it Mike Mitchell a few years ago?
I don't know. I'd say Ryan Clark.
Yeah, I think Mike Mitchell at his best was kind of Ryan Clark at his worst. But, I mean, I think Sean Davis is what you would call kind of below average last year. But I do think that his second year at the position, he'll be better. But I don't know if he'll be much better than just average, adequate.
Yeah, and that's not exactly ideal. That's why I almost thought safety should have been addressed in this draft. I was high on the safety being picked, but I feel like they gotta. I don't know. The depth there is just worrying.
Yeah, and I don't really have any names right now as far as who you could acquire, but I have to think that this is a position that they're going to look at some point. But maybe someone will surprise us. But right now, I have to think. The other thing is. With Marcus Allen, we were talking about him, he barely made the roster last year. But when talking about the dime backer, the first person Mike Tomlin mentioned this offseason was Marcus Allen. So I have to think that with no safeties being drafted and him being the first guy Tomlin mentioned about that role, I have to think that he's not only making this team, but he's going to be the opening dime guy out of the gates.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. I really didn't think Marcus Allen was going to really last that long. I felt like he didn't do enough last year. I guess, maybe in practice he was excelling and it felt like they couldn't put him on the active roster, but I don't know. This was almost a surprise. I think as we'll see more as time goes on through training camp, who's really going to take over. Training camp is a little bit more telling. As Mike Tomlin said it today, it wasn't regarding the safeties, it was regarding the wide receivers, but he was like, yeah, guys come out of mandatory mini camp looking great, and then they're garbage in training camp. And those weren't his exact words, obviously not. But it was along those lines. It's like we're gonna wait till training camp to see how these guys do. So anything could change there. I'm not sold on Marcus Allen gonna be the dime backer after training camp. We'll see after then, though.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the truth is I haven't seen enough from him yet either. We barely saw anything from him last year. One last thing, what about Brian Allen or Cameron Sutton getting moved? We haven't heard that they would, but it's been talked about in the past.
Cameron Sutton has so far said he's had no snaps at safeties, which doesn't mean he won't do it at training camp either, but I'm not sure about that one either. I don't think it will happen. I think Brian Allen's just done. I'm basically considering him just a guy hanging around until the 90-man roster gets cut down to 53. So I think Brian Allen's basically, I don't know, he's half in the grave.
With the exception of injury, besides that, I really don't see how Brian Allen could make the team besides moving to safety.
Honestly, the cornerback room is now surprisingly full and full of competition, and Brian Allen hasn't shown anything since being drafted as a developmental guy. So it's time to let newer, younger guys get in and try and show that they can develop into something. I think Brian Allen has had his time.
This will be most likely his last chance. But all right, let's segue to another position that has had considerable scrutiny since the NFL draft concluded, and that's the tight end position, specifically the number 2 spot. Is it really conceivable after all this time that Xavier Grimble can make more strides to become a de facto number 2 tight end? Or is it more likely there's still someone the Steelers are looking for, and who do you think, if that's true, who do you think they have their eyes on?
Well, I think that if they're behind safety, this is the second most position that they could get a Ryan Switzer type guy where they trade for him, because Xavier Grimble is not cutting it for me. I don't believe Xavier Grimble has had a season where he's had more than 10 catches. I believe that most of the time he hangs around 6 catches a year or a season. So that's not very good at all. So how can he be the number 2 to a guy that's I don't want to call him injury prone, but that's been injured almost every season, at least one game. Vince did pretty good last year staying uninjured. He was not there for the opening game, but after that he was pretty solid. But we can't bet on that when he missed so many games with the 49ers, when he missed so many games in his opening season with the Steelers. I just think that Xavier Grimble can't step up into that number 2 role. I'm sure that they're doing their due diligence on tight ends. I'm just not sold on Xavier Grimble. And even when he does get his snaps, like last year, again, this is more like when I picked on Sean Davis for the Chargers game. That fumble against the Broncos last year was killer. I mean, it's the stupidest rule in the NFL, more than likely, but fumbling through the back of the end zone instead of getting the touchdown was killer. And so that sticks with me. And that's on one of his 8 catches in the year. So I'm not sold on Xavier Grimble. And who would the Steelers be looking for? I'm looking at the Raiders tight end. I really liked Eric Swoop, and I know that the Steelers really like trading with the Raiders as of late. They traded 3 times in the past year, I believe now, because they traded Martavis Bryant, they traded for Ryan Switzer, and they traded Antonio Brown, all wide receivers. But I'm sure that they like Lee Smith as well. Lee Smith they brought in. Obviously, he caught a touchdown against the Steelers in the Raiders game, which is not he's stereotypically a blocking tight end, so I guess that might not work as well. But I feel like he still could be someone they're looking at. I liked Eric Swoop. Eric Swoop was a Colts tight end that didn't really get as much playing time because the Colts had so many athletic tight ends and very good tight ends, and Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle. That was the name I couldn't think of. So he didn't really get much playing time, but when he did, there was a game where all 3 of their tight ends had a touchdown, and him included. So I liked him. Other than that, I don't really know who they would go for, because it needs to be some guy that they can trade realistically for. It's not going to be some blockbuster trade. They can't even afford to take in a guy with a big salary right now because they only have $1.2 million in cap space at the moment. I'm sure they're going to reconstruct some of the contracts later on in the summer, but right now they don't got the cap space. If we start seeing them do reconstructions right now, they're probably going to start enacting a trade, because I feel like they're waiting until the end of farther in the summer is what I'm trying to say, to do that sort of stuff. But regardless, what do you think about the tight end position? Is Xavier Grimble number 2 worthy? And if he's not, who should the Steelers pursue?
Well, you were kind of wondering if he's ever had a season with more than 10 catches. He has one. That was way back in 2016. He had 11 catches, and over the last 2 seasons, he has combined for 11 catches. So he has 22 career receptions, most of them coming in his first season with the team when he also caught 2 touchdowns. We thought he was a solid number 3 tight end then, but he has been pretty lackluster in the 2 years since as a receiver. And his longest catch this year ended up being one of the most crucial fumbles all season. So that was obviously not good. I mean, he's a solid blocker. He's a solid number 3 tight end. I don't think I want him to be my number 2. And as far as potential targets, it's hard to say right now. The only free agent that is even out there that makes any sense is Jermaine Gresham, and I don't even think that makes sense. There's really no one left out there that you could really match to the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, this makes sense. Jermaine Gresham is a 30-year-old tight end who, his best days are behind him. So, I mean, I don't know who you think might be a good option. I mean, I know you mentioned a couple names, but I think until we get closer to the end of the summer, we start hearing rumblings about guys who might get cut. I think there's not really a whole lot to it,
Yeah, no, I feel you.
All right, so we'll put that on hold for right now. We already talked a little bit about defensive backs and cornerbacks, but you'd mentioned it was a crowded cornerback room. So, I mean, you got Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, and Mike Hilton. You have to think those are your starters. Cameron Sutton's going to be there. So is Justin Lane. So that right there is 5. So you might keep 5 cornerbacks. If you keep 6, what are you going to do with Artie Burns or Brian Allen? What do you do if you end up keeping 6? That it's going to be down to those 2 guys, if not someone else. I mean, if it comes down to Brian Allen or Artie Burns, which one do you keep? I would personally keep Artie Burns, but some people seem to think he's going to get cut.
I think I personally do Artie Burns because I feel like he provides more special teams value. I know we saw Brian Allen play some special teams more this past season than he did in his rookie season, but I feel like Artie Burns is still gonna get another chance if it comes down to it. Because obviously I think Cameron Sutton has surpassed Artie Burns. I feel like Cameron Sutton's in front of him on the line of cornerbacks. So, like you said, it's really going to be between Artie Burns and Brian Allen. And like I said, Brian Allen's got his foot half in the grave to me. I think Artie Burns has a better chance. So I feel like the Steelers don't want to give up on him, even though I wouldn't even be they kind of already have given up on him because he hasn't really shown anything for a first-round pick. But I feel like they want to just hold on to him as that 6th option, as that guy that just is at the bottom of the roster that can come in maybe occasionally or maybe just to try and prove himself one last time. So I think Artie Burns has the advantage in that battle. What do you think?
I agree with you, and there's a couple things to consider. One, if the Steelers were going to cut Artie Burns, I think they would have already done it, right?
It makes sense. I mean, it would kind of be it would look bad if they let him go through minicamp and stuff and possibly get hurt. Just say, all right, we're done with you now. It's just what Artie Burns is. He wouldn't have had to go through minicamp.
Exactly.
To prove that.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you going to learn about him through this training camp process? I mean, he usually performs well in training camp. Remember, a couple of years ago, he was going toe-to-toe with Antonio Brown pretty well. We know he can do well in practice. It's when he gets on the field during the games that he struggles. I mean, what more are we going to learn throughout the preseason that we don't already know about him?
Exactly. It's going to be nothing. You know what Artie Burns is. It's just a matter of can he step up. If they were going to cut him, they were going to do it already, like you said.
And I think another reason you keep Burns over Allen, they both play special teams, but like you said, I think Burns has more viability there. And not to mention, when it comes down to it, Artie Burns has started games in the NFL before. He does have experience. He has had success at the NFL level, and Brian Allen hasn't had that. And even though Artie Burns has been absolutely torched too, he has had success, and I think that'll put him over the edge. So if the Steelers keep 6 cornerbacks, I think Artie Burns is that 6th. I think you've got 5 locks with the 3 starters I already mentioned and Justin Lane, and I don't think you're cutting Cameron Sutton either, so that leaves possibly just 1 spot. And like I already said with Brian Allen, unless if he's moving to safety, I think this is pretty much it for him.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
He would have to really wow us.
I don't think he's going to do that. I just think, like I said, Brian Allen's kind of dead to me.
All right, a couple final things to touch on here. The backup quarterback position and starting right tackle, and I guess backup swing tackle. So, which one do you want to address first?
Let's do backup quarterback because I feel like it's easy. So, just to start off, obviously the backup quarterback competition is between Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph. And what I'm going to say simply is it better be Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph was drafted with the first-round grade. He was drafted when it was the position of need, so he should be the backup quarterback now. He's got a full year of redshirting, just sitting there as a number 3 quarterback. Obviously, we saw Josh Dobbs come in as a number 2 in the Oakland game, so we knew the depth chart there. But now I believe Mason Rudolph should jump to the chart. He should now be in front of Dobbs and be the number 2 quarterback. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, let's be honest. What was the main difference between Dobbs and Rudolph going into last year? It's that Dobbs had a year in the NFL offense. He knew what the Steelers offense was all about. It wasn't new to him. Mason Rudolph, it was a ton of new things. It was an adjustment process, and his talent wasn't able to shine like Josh Dobbs did. I'd say Josh Dobbs had a good preseason last year, and Mason Rudolph had an average to below average one.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that's not unexpected, right?
No, for a guy that just got into the NFL versus a guy that got to sit and learn for a year, the guy that got to sit and learn for a year should be doing better.
And not to mention Dobbs. Dobbs led the Steelers in snaps by a quarterback in the preseason 2 years ago, and I think he also led it last year too. It was either him or Rudolph. I think it was Dobbs, but there's no fourth quarterback like Landry Jones to take snaps away from them, so it's going to be the two of them. I have to think one of them will start each of the first two preseason games. I don't know. Probably Dobbs will start game 1 and then Rudolph game 2.
Something like that. I mean, they're definitely going to be showcasing those two to see who's going to be the number 2. And they're going to make it a competition. They're still going to see who is actually the best guy for the job.
They'll give Dobbs every opportunity to, lose it, if you will. I mean, he's earned the right to be the backup going into camp.
Oh yeah, easily.
So, like you said, though, you draft this guy with giving him a first-round grade, and you take him instead of other positions that could have used a draft pick instead. This is a guy that needs to be able to be the backup quarterback. If he can't make the jump with the arm talent you thought he had, that's an incredible disappointment, and really it doesn't bode well for his long-term viability to stay on the roster, let alone possibly succeeding Ben Roethlisberger. So we better see a pretty big jump from Mason Rudolph, and he better win the backup quarterback job pretty clear-cut. So let's move.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Completely agree with you. Similar situation, but kind of different in some respects at right tackle. So you've got a vacated starting spot with Marcus Gilbert in Arizona now. There's the guy who filled in for him most of last year, Matt Filer, who's going to be the starter going into camp. But there's also last year's third-round pick, Chukwuma Okorafor, who's hot on his tail. And coaches also mentioned Gerald Hawkins, a former fourth-round pick who has missed 2 seasons due to injury in his 3-year NFL career and has only played in a handful of games and snaps. But they also mentioned him as a possibility to be that starting right tackle. So I guess with that in mind, let's talk about those 3 guys and the potential for each of them to become the starter and the swing guy, if you will. So I guess, who do you think will be the starter and why?
In my mind, it's Matt Filer. Matt Filer played amazing last year. The Steelers had one of the best offensive lines in the league. Even without Marcus Gilbert, when Matt Filer stepped in, Filer did great. He's just another guy. He's the next guy that stepped up on the Steelers' offensive line. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And it's his job to lose. I'm going to say Chukwuma Okorafor can challenge him. Chukwuma Okorafor had a lot of raw talent to be worked with. He had only been playing with football for a very short time comparatively, and he had a lot of physical gifts to work with. So I think that if anything, Chukwuma Okorafor is competing. I don't think Gerald Hawkins is part of the competing talk. I feel like this should be Matt Filer's shot to lose, possibly to Chukwuma Okorafor, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Matt Filer to me is a clear-cut starter. I feel like they got to create competition. You can't just give a guy a job and say, yeah, you did good, it's your job. You got to give him competition so that he keeps fighting. You got to have a guy that's paranoid that he's always going to be replaced. So that's why it's happening in general. And then I feel like Chukwuma Okorafor is going to be that swing tackle or the backup there. I feel like he got to play a little bit about mid-season. He started to play a tiny bit. I thought he did decently. I thought he was doing pretty good. So I think he's going to be the backup swing tackle there and the emergency backup tackle. And then Gerald Hawkins, I literally think that they're just trying to get someone to trade for him. They give Hawkins in the 7th for a 6th-round pick. Because I don't see Hawkins making the roster with his history. I think they're just trying to stir up some interest, saying, "Oh, he might win the job. You never know." I don't know. I don't really know. Because I wasn't even thinking about him. I honestly almost forgot about him. What do you think about the right tackle competition going on?
With Hawkins, it's possible they're going to try to just play him a lot, maybe even play him at different positions, and then if he plays well, then kind of dangle that out there again. Maybe you get something for him, but I just don't see it likely. I think, actually, a little differently from you, I think the Steelers are hoping that Chukwuma Okorafor can take the reins, and not that necessarily that they disrespect Matt Filer, but as a matter of fact, Matt Filer didn't play any snaps at right tackle during last year's preseason. I don't know if you knew that.
I did.
You did know that. I think it's very interesting how like all these offensive linemen on the Steelers are so versatile. I really like that.
Yeah, it's very good. So one gets hurt, it's just it's the next man up mentality, and it doesn't matter which position. It's what they do really, really well.
I just feel like the Steelers, having invested that pick in Okorafor, really want to see him become the starter. And I'm not saying they'll throw him in there if he doesn't deserve it, but I feel like if it's an even battle, they'll go to him instead of Filer, if I'm making any sense.
Interesting. See, I feel like because Filer got to play so much, I personally think that Filer has the edge if it's an even battle.
Normally I'd agree with you just because of the fact that he was the incumbent starter, but I almost feel, I know he was a third-round pick, but I feel like the Steelers took him where they took him, thinking that he could really be the stud right tackle for this team for years to come, and I think they might just want to throw him out there. I do think Filer will win the job out of the gates, but I don't know that he will be the starting right tackle, say, going into the final month of the season.
Interesting. We'll have to see.
Certainly a good embarrassment of riches to have, but then again, it is kind of an unproven commodity with just the one season for Filer there. I really didn't expect Filer to be a standout right tackle. I mean, we're not going to say he's a Pro Bowler, but at the same time, he was a solid starter at right tackle after, like I said, not playing a snap at right tackle previously in the preseason and just being kind of like a Chris Hubbard guy in the years before that.
It's amazing what Mike Munchak did with offensive linemen. Turned coal into diamonds is exactly what happens. Hopefully, Coach Sarrett can keep that up.
The one good thing about Sarrett is that he was promoted from within, and I know we've talked about this before. He was supposed to be the offensive line coach before Munchak was brought in, and then when he was brought in, they had two offensive line coaches, which was really nice to see. So, I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be that overly different.
Yeah, I agree.
So that at least is something to be good and pleased about. All right, I think that just about covers everything that we missed in the past month and a half here from the Steelers, anyhow.
I think so too.
I mean, if there are a couple things like Joey Porter talking about Ben Roethlisberger, I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah, Joey Porter going on and saying how he's not very much of a good leader and all that.
The same song and dance we've heard 50 times this offseason, and he was also complaining about Devin Bush getting the number 55, even though Arthur Moats... Oh, there's something we missed. Arthur Moats announced his retirement. Former Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker, played with the Steelers from 2014 to 2017, and spent last year with the Cardinals, but had a season-ending injury in preseason, so he didn't play with them, and also played with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he was one of the really good guys in the locker room.
Yeah, Moats was one of the best personalities there was. He was a pretty good player too as a backup and such, but he was just a really good dude. He was obviously nominated for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award for one of the years he was with the Steelers, and he's just a really genuine good dude. So just wishing him the best in his retirement.
He had a solid NFL career, too, 9 years, and let's not forget, he is the man that ended Brett Favre's consecutive start streak when he was playing with the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't even remember that, no.
It was a while ago, but yeah, he's the one that knocked Brett Favre out and ended his streak, so kind of moment of, I guess, infamy for him, but it's probably what he's going to be best known for, at least in Buffalo. So... let's talk a little bit about kind of where we see the Steelers headed as far as stat projections. So just something fun we want to talk about with, a lot of time before we get into the preseason per se. Let's talk projections about how we think the numbers are going to look for the offense and defense. So First of all, I have to think the Steelers' defense should at least be a little better. Now, statistically, they were a pretty solid unit last year. Last year, the defense was in the top 10 in total yards, and the offense was obviously a really solid unit too. But I have to think the defense will be a bit better, and the offense will be a bit worse in terms of just pure raw yardage.
I agree. I feel like the defense actually, at the end of the day, could have been worse. They were also number one in sacks, tied with Kansas City. So, like, they could have been worse. So, I feel like they should be improved with. They added guys at every position that need besides safeties. They got Devin Bush and they got why is his name? The guy from the Chiefs, the cornerback.
Steven Nelson.
Nelson, yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. They also drafted Justin Lane. It's just they also got Mark Barron. It's just I feel like they should be a better unit.
All right, so let's start with the offense. Obviously, they're going to be minus Antonio Brown. We already know how they can perform without Le'Veon Bell. So last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers finished with how many total yards is that? Let me figure that out real quick. Just trying to do some math here. They had just under 6,500 yards of offense. I placed my projection to be lower than that. I had their average at, let's see. I had their average yards per game right at 371.8 yards per game. Now, just so you're aware, that would have ranked the Steelers' offense in terms of yards per game at 12th in the NFL. I thought that was fair, maybe even lowballing them a little bit, but I think dropping them from 403 yards to 371 was a pretty fair just result, because you think about it, you hope the Steelers aren't driving as many long fields because they had the worst average starting field position in the league last year, and they don't have Antonio Brown to provide as many explosive plays. So that's kind of my reasoning. I think 59.50 is a fair number. Would you take an over or under on that?
You actually picked a really good number there. I feel like it's almost going to hit that exactly. So if I had to choose, I'm going to choose slightly under. I'm going to choose that slightly under because I can't deny what Antonio Brown did for this team. However, I am excited for the running back by committee approach that is likely coming in this next season. I am excited for Dante Moncrief, Juju Smith-Schuster, and maybe the stepping up of James Washington. So I'm going to say that it is just slightly under. I'm expecting not as bad as outsiders think it's going to be for the Steelers.
Well, thank you for saying that, Austin. That validates my kind of thoughts as far as how I did spend a lot of time working on this, so I like to think I did a good job in terms of coming up with projections. I'm going to I'll just go with the over just because, I don't know, it's an offense league more than ever now, so I'll just take the slight over, but I think that's a pretty fair number to go. Another thing I looked at is passing yards and rushing yards. Last year, the Steelers passed for over 5,000 yards, Ben Roethlisberger and Josh Dobbs combined. Mostly Roethlisberger, obviously. I have that number coming down a pretty significant amount, and I have the rushing yards going up from, I think it was just under like 1,400, something like that. I have that number coming up, so passing yards I have at 4,250, which might be a little low, but I also think the Steelers are going to be running the ball more than they did last year. And I have their rushing yards up to 1,700, so that adds up to 5,950 in total. So what do you think about both of those numbers, and then would you take an over or under on both?
So for the passing number, I'm going to take over. I feel like I've been more excited about Johnson and Moncrief now, and I'm thinking the bigger things from Washington. I feel like Juju's still going to be Juju, so I feel like I'm going to still take the over. I feel like I think obviously they're going to decrease from last year, but I feel like it's still going to be over 4,250. As for the rushing, I think I'm going to take just slightly under on that. I think that I feel like they're going to do the running by committee approach, and I feel like they're still not going to like really employ it. Like last year, we saw Fickner kind of struggle to get the run game going and establish the run game. Sometimes he would just kind of give up on it, and it would be bad. So I'm going to say that he doesn't. I'm going to say that he. I'm going to say under. I'm just going to go with slightly under for that, just to balance out with what I said for the total yards of offense. What do you have?
I'll go with the same route you're going, just because it's been a while since Ben Roethlisberger has thrown for less than 4,250, and it would take a lot of commitment to running the football to get over 1,700 yards. Just my personal thoughts. Points per game, I have the Steelers scoring 395 points this year. That's an average clip of 24.7 points per game. That would have ranked 13 in 2018. Last year they were tied for 6th at 26.8 points per game. So I have them coming down just over 2 points per game. I think that's a fair assessment because, one, you're losing Antonio Brown, and two, the Steelers were the top red zone team on offense in the league last year, and I think they'll come closer to the median this year.
I'm going to pick under for that value. I think 24.7 is a pretty good number. I just think that they're not going to be able to keep up with last year's offense, how well it did. I think teams are going to evolve a little bit. They're going to understand that after having Fichtner run the offense for a year, they're going to have a little bit better understanding that they're not going to be as good in the red zone as they were. So I'm going to say just slightly under. And obviously Antonio Brown contributes to that as well. Antonio Brown led the league in receiving touchdowns last year, so that's obviously a big thing as well. So I'm going to go slightly under. I think that they could finish with 24 on the dot or 23.9, somewhere around there. What do you got?
We're in the same boat. I think it's going to be just around 24, and I think a field goal difference makes sense when you're losing a player of that caliber. Sacks against, the Steelers had just 24 sacks against last year. That was 4th best in the league. Factor in the change at right tackle. I'm going to have the Steelers giving up 26 sacks this year. 2 more than last year. That would have tied for 5th best in the NFL last season. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's an over or under?
So normally I'd pick under, but to be weird, and I'm going to say over. This isn't something I should predict, but the Steelers were very lucky last year. The only injuries they had, they didn't hurt them. Ramon Foster looked like he almost tore his ACL or tore his knee. I forget what it was in the preseason, and then he was fine. He was able to return for game 1. Then with Marcus Gilbert, Matt Filer stepped up. However, I don't think the Steelers get as lucky this year. Injuries always happen. So I'm going to say they go slightly above. I don't think they're going to – I think it's because of an injury. If no injury happens, I'm under, but I'm picking over because I think the Steelers get a little unlucky this year. What do you think?
It's been a good while since the Steelers gave up 26-plus sacks. I can't remember the last time it happened. I think it would have been 2014, maybe 2015, but that was also a year Ben Roethlisberger missed 4 games. It's been a while. I think the Steelers are – I'm going to actually go with the under, and my reasoning for this is the Steelers threw the ball more than any other team last season and still had just 24 sacks against. When you bring that average number of attempts per game down, it's going to be harder to sack Ben Roethlisberger. I think they give up a sack every 34 passes, something like that. That's just ridiculous, and I would expect that number to rise a bit, but I think it'll cancel out when you have the number of attempts per game going down as well. So I think you'll sit right around 24, 25 again, so I'll take a slight under. Turnovers against, as a team, they had, how many did they have? They had, I'm blanking on the number of turnovers they had, but my projection this year, we know Ben Roethlisberger had 16 interceptions, Josh Dobbs had 1. I have them throwing 14 picks as quarterbacks this year. That would have ranked 21st in the NFL last season.
I am going to choose under there. I think that I feel like losing Antonio Brown has, I know this is going to sound dumb to some, has some benefits. I feel like Antonio Brown gets forced the ball a lot, and it results in a few interceptions. And I think without Antonio Brown, Ben's not going to be forcing the ball as much. So I'm actually going to go under. And it's not going to be much under, maybe only 13. But I think that this it's going to change this year. I think he is going to be under 14 interceptions.
I like the way you think. I'm going to have it as a slight under, and I'm hoping Ben Roethlisberger has 12 or less, personally. I'll have Dobbs throwing 2 or Rudolph throwing 2. And then lost fumbles I have at 8. That ranked 14th last season.
Well, I'm going to say that they go under again. They got rid of Steven Ridley, so that's all that I needed to know. I'm going to go under with that.
Yeah, it's honestly just kind of a crapshoot, too, because if you fumble, it's just kind of a 50-50 if you're going to get it back, too. Explosive plays. Last year, the Steelers had 72. That's plays of 20 yards or more. 10 of them came on runs, and 62 came on passes. I'm going to bring that number down from 72 to 65. Is that fair?
I think that's a really good number because I'm going to say, oh, wow, that's a really hard one. I'm going to say that they go under. Not by much, but I think that they do go under there. Part of me wants to go over because I feel like with a full season of James Conner, because James Conner had so many explosive runs, that the Steelers could have had even more last year if James Conner got to play the entire year and not get injured. So I want to go over, but the loss of Antonio Brown is big for me for that. So I'm gonna stick with under. What do you think?
I'm going to stick with under, too. I still think they break the 60 barrier, but I think at the end of the day, you're talking about a receiver that even when he got the ball at the line of scrimmage on screens, he could take it the distance. This was an explosive guy, and yeah, James Washington and Dante Moncrief could replace some of that. I don't think you can replace all of that, so I'm going to drop that number a decent amount there to right around the low 60s, so I'll take the under. And we already alluded to this a bit, but red zone percentage, I have it set at 62. That would have been 14th last season. Remember, last year they led the league at 73%.
I'm gonna say under, just because I think it's gonna fall slightly. What do you think?
I'm also taking the under. The Steelers have typically had, with Ben Roethlisberger as the quarterback, a red zone percentage under 60 with him as the quarterback. So I think that's going to be more. They're going to find their watermark a little more likely this year. Last year was kind of more of an outlier, as nice as it was. All right, let's flip over to the other side. We'll talk team defense. I have total yards against at 5,200, which is more than they gave up last year, I'm pretty sure. Let me just check real quick. Yards against, the Steelers gave up 5,235, so I have them giving up, 35 less yards this year than they did last year. That ranked 6th in the NFL this past season, if that is what they had. You going over that or under? So I'll say under as in they give up less yards, or over they give up more yards.
I'm going to say under. I feel like this unit just got better and didn't really get worse. I mean, you could still argue that the safety position's a little bit in trouble, but I feel like they got better. So I'm going to say that even though it's already a pretty solid number in terms of ranking in the NFL, I think that they go under. What do you think?
I'm in agreement with you, not to mention I think the Steelers are going to run the ball more and they'll become a little more of a ball control offense than they have been, certainly last year when they were throwing it a ton. That'll mean eating up more clock, which means less plays against on defense. Passing yards, the Steelers last year gave up 3,697. This year I have 3,600 in total. That would have ranked in 9th last season. Remember, sacks play into the passing yardage number.
So I'm also going to go under. I feel like Devin Bush's versatility to be able to actually have speed, to be able to cover those crossing routes and stuff, I think that helps. I think Nelson helps as a cornerback. He's an improvement. I like that Justin Lane's there. I like that Mark Barron. They got a veteran there. I'm going to say that the passing defense improves, and so I'm going to choose under again.
I'm actually going to go over here. Steven Nelson gave up 11 plays of 20 yards or more last season, and I understand he was targeted far more than any other player in the league, but that does concern me, and I still think the Steelers secondary is just going to have its problems, and I worry about any situation where Artie Burns may have to play. I'm going to take the over in this situation, but not by a ton. Last I have rushing yards at 1,600 yards. That would have ranked 8th in the NFL in 2018. Last year they gave up 1,538 rushing yards.
I'm going to go over here because I think that the Steelers as a whole are kind of a bit undersized. Devin Bush's main reason why he wasn't the first inside linebacker taken in the draft was he was a little bit smaller. Mark Barron, the same exact thing. Mark Barron, as the inside linebacker, was the safety at one point because he was smaller. I feel like the team is just a little bit undersized in a few positions, so I think that hurts against the run. And I don't know. I feel like watching the team against the run just hasn't been good in the past few years. So I'm going to say that it's over in this regard. What do you think?
I don't know. I was calling back recent seasons to see if I could find a trend, but they've been all over the place. They've been slightly above and slightly below. I'll just take the under because I took the over on the passing yards, but I don't have a ton to back it up right now. Points per game. I have the Steelers giving up 20.7 points per game. That would have ranked 9th in the NFL in 2018.
I'm going to say that they give up just over, just barely. I think that I think it's going to be at 21 on the dot. I'll say not much higher because I feel like that's a good number. So yeah, I'll leave it at 21. What do you think?
I'm in agreement with you. I'll take 21. So I'll take the over. Sacks. Last 2 seasons ago, the Steelers had 56. Last year, they had 52. I'm going to have them drop a little bit to 48 this year. That still would have ranked 6th in the NFL if, in this past season. Is 48 an accurate mark?
I'm saying more, baby. I'm thinking that the Steelers could possibly hit the 60 mark, which hasn't been done since, I believe, the Saints. The Saints a while ago. I can't even. Oh no, it's the Panthers. The Panthers on their Super Bowl season did it last. I think that this. I have high expectations for this group together. I feel like the sack department is where they all excel still. So that's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say they go over.
I'll take the over, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't feel as good about this. I just feel like because I don't know. I'll take the over, but I don't think they're going to reach 60 for sure. Turnovers, I have at 25. The reason I set it at 25, last year the Steelers had 15. You need 25 in order to win the Super Bowl. That's what the numbers tell you. Since 2000, every Super Bowl champion, with the exception of the 2016 New England Patriots, who had 23, everyone else has had 25 or more turnovers forced in a season. So last year the Steelers had 8 interceptions and I believe 6 or 7 fumble recoveries. So I have the target at 25. That's where you have to be. Is that going to be where they get it?
Under. I don't see this team improving in that department all too much. I know they added Nelson, who's really good at that. He had a lot of he got his hands on the ball a lot, but I'm just not sold on this team doing better in that department. I'm gonna say under. How about you?
I too will take the under. Interceptions I've set at 15. After 8 last year being a historically bad mark, are they going to be able to bounce back with 15?
Under. That's the one I'm more concerned about. I think that they could actually force fumbles, which I guess is kind of backwards since I said they're an undersized team. An undersized team shouldn't be able to hit hard and cause those fumbles, but theoretically anyway. Then I'm not big. I don't think the Steelers are going to get that many interceptions again. I think they're going to have another season where they only get like 10 or 11. So I'm going to go under.
Fumble recoveries, I have at 10. That would have ranked 12th in the NFL last season. So it's not. That might seem like a lot, but it's not a crazy amount.
Because it's a wild card, I'm going to say over. Like I said, I feel like the fumbles is not something I'm as worried about, even though they didn't even really do that much last year. I'm going to say they go over that.
They were pretty unlucky last year when it came to fumbles.
Yep. That's kind of what I'm basing off of, luck.
Yeah, it is. It isn't really something you can just kind of throw out there. It's just something I had out there for the overall turnovers. Explosive plays. So we talked about the offensive explosive plays. Last year the Steelers gave up 63, 10 on the ground, and 53 passing. So I just took a guess. Instead of 63 explosive plays against, how about 56? Is that a reasonable number? Should that be higher, lower? I just kind of went with a shot in the dark.
I think that's a solid number, but I'm still going to take over. I think the Steelers just hit around 60. I think 60 is like their spot where they're going to be at, maybe like 59, 60. So I'm going to say over.
I, too, will say over. Red zone percentage, 60% is where I have them. They were at 59% last year.
Ooh, that's a rough one. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say that they do better in red zone defense, or I say the same. So what do you think?
I'll go with the under, just to be different. All right. Let's transition to individual players. Let's start on offense. Ben Roethlisberger. When I factored in the 4,250 passing yards, I included Roethlisberger and the backups. So with Roethlisberger, I have 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and the backup quarterbacks, I have 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. If you do Roethlisberger's based on 11 yards per completion last year, he had 11.3 yards per completion. That would be roughly 364 completions this year. And I think last year, how many completions did he have last year? He had 452 last year. So I have him dropping 90 whole completions, which certainly could be an under, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on those numbers. I can read them back to you if you want.
So, I got it. I think over 4,000 for Ben. I'm going to pick over for that. I think he's going to throw a little bit more than that. So obviously he's coming off of like a 5,000-yard season. So I know 5,000 is normally a lot, but obviously we're in like more of a passing league. So I'm going to say he's over 4,000. Might not be by a lot, but I think he is. 28 touchdowns. I am going to say under, but barely. I'm going to say 27. I feel like that's a good number for him. I feel like the Steelers are going to run slightly more, but not by much. But I feel like I'm factoring that in. Then for the interceptions at 12, just over 13. That's what I said before. So I'm going to stick with that and say over there. For the backups, I actually do need you to repeat it because I don't remember the backup numbers.
I had 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks.
So for the yards, I'm going to go under. I feel like the Ben's going to have a pretty good season this season in terms of health-wise. I guess I'm going to go under for everything with that in mind. I feel like they're not going to play much. I feel like they're not going to be able to play and get any stats of that nature. So I'm going to go under.
All right, I'm just going to keep moving along here. Let's go running backs. James Conner. I went back and forth with these because of the possible by committee thing, but last year James Conner had 215 carries. I have him going up to 225 for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns with 35 catches for 350 yards and 1 touchdown through the air.
So 225 catches, you said?
225 carries.
Oh, carry. I'm sorry. I meant carries. So for carries, I'm going to go under. I think the committee thing is going to really impact it. I guess this is another scenario where we're kind of going under, because I feel like the committee is going to break this all up so that all the stats are kind of like distributed between Benny Snell, Connor, and Jalen Samuels. So I'm going to go under on all those stats.
Okay. Jalen Samuels, I had 50 carries for 225 yards and 1 touchdown and 35 receptions for 275 yards and 3 touchdowns. I have him and Connor with the same amount of catches.
So on all the running stats, I'm going to go over. I think Jalen Samuels is going to get a little bit more carries and yards and all that and touchdowns. For the receiving stats, though, I'm going to go under on the receptions at 35. I feel like he's going to get slightly less because it's just a feeling, but I am going to up the touchdowns. I think he's going to go over on the touchdowns there, so that's what I have it at.
All right. Benny Snell, I have 45 rushing attempts for 175 yards and 4 touchdowns with 5 catches for 30 yards.
I'm just going to do unders all across the board there. I don't think Benny Snell is really going to be able to play all too much. I feel like 45 carries would be a lot for him in his rookie year. So I think I'm going to go under on everything. And he's not really the greatest pass catching back, in my opinion. So I'm going to go under there as well. I say maybe he finishes the year with 2 catches, if that. So I'm gonna go with all unders across the board there.
My reasoning for the 4 touchdowns and the attempts was because Benny Snell was a closer when he was at Kentucky, and he could be a short yardage back. So I just want you to know where I got those numbers from.
Fair enough.
All right, let's go to receivers now. Juju Smith-Schuster. Remember, I was working around that 364 completions roughly, so right around there to 400. I have Juju Smith-Schuster with 100 for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns.
104, 1,200 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I'm going to go under on the catches. I actually think the yards aren't that bad, though. I think because Juju actually had a pretty decent yards per catch last year. I'm going to go over on the yards. Even though with less catches, I'm going to go over on the yards. The touchdowns, I'm going to go slightly under. I think that he's going to come down with 6 instead of 7. So I'm going to go under there.
All right. James Washington and Dante Moncrief, I have each with 50 catches. I have Moncrief with 5 touchdowns and 750 yards. Washington, I have 4 touchdowns and 700 yards.
Wait, so 50 catches for each?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know how you want to split that up because I'm not sure how the playing time is going to get divvied up.
I'm going to say under for James Washington for all of those except for touchdowns, where I'm going to say he actually goes up in touchdowns. Moncrief, I'm going to... 50 is a good number for Moncrief. I feel like that's... I'm going to go over. I think Moncrief, I'm going to bet on him being good because I feel like I've heard a lot of stuff for that. I feel like he is going to take this next step. So I'm going to go over there. The touchdowns, I'm going to go under, but the yards, I'm also going to go over. And that's just to compensate for James Washington getting more touchdowns and him not. So that's how I'll compensate it.
Okay. Deontay Johnson, I know he was buzzing in camp, but I gave him 25 catches for 300 yards and 1 touchdown just because there's a lot of football to go around here. And you trust me, you get to that 365 to 400 receptions mark pretty quickly when you factor in the running backs too.
So I'm going to go under on the yards. I'm going to go over on the touchdowns. I think he's going to get at least 2. And then for catches, it was set at 25, you said, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
I think that I think I'll go. Oh, that's a rough one with how I divvied up the other catches. I gave 50 to I'm going to go over. I think that would be a decent amount and still leave a little bit left over for the running backs and like Eli Rogers and Ryan Switzer and that. So I'm going to go over.
Vance McDonald, I have 50 catches for 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. He caught 50 passes last year, just so you know.
Oh, damn. I honestly completely forgot about Vance McDonald when I was just picking Deontay Johnson. I'm going to switch Deontay Johnson to under, and I'm going to put Vance McDonald at over on all his stats. Vance McDonald is going to get a more prominent role in this offense. I think he's going to succeed.
I combined Ryan Switzer and Eli Rogers just because I'm not convinced both of them are going to make the roster, but I have them with 20 catches for 150 yards because they're less than 10 yards a reception guy and 2 touchdowns.
I'm going to pick, for the catches, I'm going to say over. I don't even know if I have enough room to say over anymore, but I'm going to say over. And then after that, for yards, I'm also going to say over. I think 150 is a lot, but for touchdowns, I'm going to leave it exactly where it is. I don't think it's going to be under. I don't think it's going to be over. I think 2 touchdowns is perfectly where it's going to be at. So I'm going to leave it right where it is.
Okay, so we'll leave it a push for touchdowns. The trio of Xavier Grimble, Roosevelt Nix, and Zach Gentry I have for a combined 18 catches, 3 touchdowns, and for Xavier Grimble alone I have 3 starts, over or under.
So for the whole group, I'm going to go under for the catches. I'm also going to go under for the touchdowns. Did you say yards? Did I miss that?
No, I didn't. I wasn't going to bother with that few catches.
That's fair. Okay, cool. And then Xavier Grimble, 3 starts. I'm going to go over only because just because he started doesn't mean he's like the starter. I feel like, I can't remember exactly, but I think Vance McDonald only had, 7 actual starts last season, but like he's obviously the number 1 tight end. So I'm going to say just by technicality that Grimble's going to go over.
Well, my question more to you is more so, how many games does Vance McDonald miss? That would be a better question.
Okay, so I was being literal. So what I'm going to pick is Xavier Grimble has to be the starter more than twice. I'm going to cry, so I'm going to pick under.
Okay. All right, so that's everything I had written down. So I had a bunch of defensive players lined up, but all right, so let's talk sack numbers. I guess what's a good projection. So Cam Hayward for his career has averaged 7.5 sacks per season, and I think that's a good number to set it as. So 7.5 sacks, I think that's a perfect push, but that's just me.
I'm actually going to pick the over for that. I think that he's going to hit 9.
Okay. Make sure you keep track of these numbers just so you can add them up, because I want to see what we both get.
Okay.
Stephon Tuitt did he have like 6 last year, Stephon Tuitt?
He had 6.5. I actually, you know what's funny? I have his numbers up. He had 5.5. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 5.5. Let's put it at 6, or do you want to go 6.5?
We could do 6.5.
All right. Javon Hargrave, I feel like a lot of his sacks are going to be dependent on if one of those other 2 guys miss time. I know he had 6.5 last year. I'm going to drop him down to 5. He doesn't play.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think that he's going to be at 5. I like that number.
Because I was going to say, although he's a good pass rusher, the thing is he just doesn't play as much when the other 2 guys are healthy.
Yeah, no, that's what it comes down to.
Watt is 10 might be the low water mark, so how about 11.5?
11.5. I want to pick over, and I'm going to actually say 13.
Okay, make sure you just keep track of that. Bud Dupree, a lot of talk about him and perhaps being healthy this year. He had 5.5 last year. I'm going to be ambitious and set it at 7.5 and say that's the goal for him.
Under, and I'm going to say 6.
Okay. I'm going to combine Vince Williams, Devin Bush, and Mark Barron. I want to see 7.5 out of those 3 guys.
This is where I feel most, where I think we differ on sacks the most. 7. You said 7.5?
Actually, I'm just going to go 7, straight 7.
Straight 7? I'm going over with 14.
Whoa.
I think they're all really good pass rushers from the inside, so I'm setting the bar high for them.
All right. 14 is what you got. I have 7. Backup edge rushers, so that means Ola Adeni, Anthony Chickalo, and anyone else. I'm going to set at 4 or 3. 3 or 4? 3?
That's a good question, because I was actually, when you were about to say 4, I was just going to say under and 3. So if you choose 3, I'd push there.
All right, let's just go 3 then.
So, all right, I'll push with 3. I'll say that they get 3 there.
Okay. Let's just I'm going to put 0 for Sean Davis. I don't think free safety is going to get any.
No, not from him. Edmonds.
Terrell Edmonds.
However,
Edmonds, you get
that's different.
1 or 2. Or do you want to shoot the gap, get 1.5?
I'm going to say that Edmonds gets 1.
All right.
So I think we'd push with 1, and I'd go under with 1.5. I think Edmonds just gets 1.
Okay, I'll leave it at 1. He had 1 last year. Marcus Allen. Does Marcus Allen make sense to have any? because he could be the dime guy, but at the same time, maybe he's not really blitzing that much.
I'll say that he gets one randomly. I feel like he can do it.
All right, so I'll put him down at 0.5, just for me. All right. I have 0 from Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Cam Sutton, Artie Burns, Justin Lane.
Yes, I agree with all of those.
Mike Hilton, I have at 2. Last year he had 1. 2 years ago he had 3, so I'll split the difference.
I'm going to push with exactly 2.
Okay. And then the combination of Isaiah Buggs, Tyson Alualu, and Daniel McCullers, I'll give 2.5.
I'm also going to get ambitious here, and I'm going to give them 4.5.
Okay. Have you tallied up your numbers? Because I just tallied up mine. I'll go through one more time, but I think I have my number.
All right. I'll have mine in a second. I just got to type it into my calculator, my handy-dandy thing, and I'll have it for you in a second. Oh, no, I put 513 instead of 13.
Okay.
All is lost. You go over your number first.
Okay, well, based on what I was looking at here, I'll double check just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure I got 54, which would have been 6 more than I had projected with the 48. So it is feasible. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you're going to need big seasons from Bud Dupree. Excuse me. Stephon Tuitt, and obviously you're going to need T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward to keep doing what they've been doing. So I'll double check, but I have 54 right now.
So after I did my math, I landed at 59, which fits right at my thing saying that they almost could get to 60, or they could get to 60. I have them at 59.
Okay. So is there anyone you think is going to break out more so than anyone else as far as individual sacks? Like, who do you like of the inside linebackers? Who do you think has the most? Probably Vince Williams, right?
I'm thinking Vince returns to the 2-year-ago form, because now I feel like he's going to have more chances of blitzer. But what's even better, I feel like the Steelers have more chances on stunts from the inside linebacker position, because John Bostic isn't really the best blitzer, in my opinion. He still got sacks last year, but Devin Bush, that's something he's actually good at. So it offers the ability for the Steelers to offer a trick where, they might stunt some Vince and send Devin Bush down one of the gaps. I don't know. I feel like that's where I feel like I feel like a good amount of sacks is going to come from there, because both Devin Bush and Vince Williams are pretty good at pass rushing. I think Mark Barron gets 1 or 2 as well. So I think Vince is going to answer your question, I think Vince is going to just return and get like 6 sacks again.
All right, and I double-checked my numbers. 54 is correct. Last thing is, I guess, interceptions. So let's just talk about that real quick. Last year they had 8. You think, 11 or 12 is a good number?
I think 11 or 12 is a good number.
All right, let's just say 12. So that being the case, how do you want to break it down? I'll give Joe Hayden 2.
I will also give Joe Hayden 2.
I'll give Mike Hilton 1.
I'm going to go with 0.
Steven Nelson 2.
I'm actually going to go 3 there.
Sean Davis get any?
0.
He's had an interception in every year of his career. I'll give him 1. 2, 4. I'll give Terrell Edmonds 2.
I'm going to give him 1.
I'm going to give 0 to Cam Sutton, Artie Burns, Justin Lane.
I'm going to give them 1 as a whole.
Is there anybody we're missing? 0 for Marcus Allen.
0 from Marcus Allen. But I just want to say, Last season, do you know who got the first interception of the season last season?
Let's see. It was Cam Sutton.
It was Cam Sutton. And actually, I'm betting on getting out of that group, getting one. But yeah, no interceptions from Marcus Allen.
How many are you at right now?
If I were to end it right there, 7. But we didn't do linebackers yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm at 8 right now. So you have several to go. I have 4 to go. So I guess I'll go. Devin, let's just go with the inside linebackers. I think they come up with a pair.
I'm going to say that they come up with. Damn. I'm between 1 and 2 here. I'll say that Devin Bush allows them to get 2. I'll say that. I'll give them 2 there.
I have 2 more to play with. I'm going to give 1 to TJ Watt.
I will also give 1 to TJ Watt.
He hasn't had one since his first game in the NFL.
Yeah, so I guess depending on, it's kind of just smoke in the water.
I need to see. The Steelers' interceptions came from...
Well, Bud Dupree got one last year in the Tampa Bay game. I don't know if you're giving him one. I'm not.
That was his first career interception. I'm not banking on that.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't really know where I'm going to put this last one. I might just throw this away, to be honest with you. I might either throw it away or I'll give it to someone just willy-nilly.
I'm exactly what I projected. I said that they'd be at 10, and I'm exactly at 10 right now.
10 interceptions?
Yeah, that's where I had them when we first went over this. Well, without doing the math, when you said you said them at 15 interceptions, I said under, and I said it's either 10 or 11, and I'm at 10, and that's where I'm leaving it. I think really no one else you could convince me is going to get an interception. No defensive lineman.
Just to get to my number, I'm going to give Cam Hayward 1 because the Steelers haven't had a defensive lineman pick off a pass since Stephon Tuitt against the Bengals in 2015. So that's how I'll reach my number. I'll inflate it that way.
There you go.
You can complain to me if you want, and you'd be fair to do so, but that's where I'm going to go.
Yep. I end up at 10. That's where I stand.
I'm at 12. So if there's anything else to go over, I'll just say wins. Right now, I'll just put wins at 10.
That's so hard. Because I'm going to say under. I say they get 9. I feel like they're 9-7 team right now. What about you?
I'm going to push and say 10. I'm not going to go over, though.
You push. I respect it.
All right. So that concludes our projections part. Wow, we are at an hour and 22 minutes. So let's get into NFL stuff, and then we'll wrap this one up. So some news from Roger Goodell. Oh, actually, wait, you had a question first, right?
We'll leave it for another episode. It's not really important right now. We'll leave it for the next time we talk.
Okay. So Roger Goodell recently spoke at a Jim Kelly event on the need for the Buffalo Bills to build a new stadium to stay competitive while also stating that he wants the Bills to remain in Buffalo. He also said that he doesn't think 4 preseason games may be necessary, and while this might be true, it's definitely a sign, in my opinion, that the owners still want Goodell to impose an 18-game regular season on the players at some point. This topic has come up from time to time over the last 10 years, but this could be a huge issue in the upcoming lockout that we could be seeing. So what are your thoughts on, first, the Bills, and then potential 18-game season and, getting rid of 2 preseason games?
First, on the Bills, I feel like they can't move out of Buffalo. That's what I personally think. I think that they belong there. That's Buffalo's team. I know that people talk about moving them all the time, but I think that it'd be such a shame to move them out of Buffalo. The one good thing is that, you know what, I can't even say it's a good thing. I was going to say that makes it so that there's only 2 New York teams. I'm not a big fan of states that get 3 teams like Florida, New York, California, and, that's it. I was about to say Texas. Texas doesn't have 3 NFL teams. Then it just hits me again that, the Giants and Jets are fake New York teams, and Buffalo was the real New York team. So there's really no saving grace for that. But moving on, the 18-game regular season just isn't feasible unless salary cap goes up and players are paid for those 2 extra games. Like with how football is, injuries are so common, and injuries are very brutal, and they could end careers very quickly. So players need to be compensated accordingly. So if a player has an average annual value of, an average game value of about $2 million, they need to be paid $4 more million for the year. Which, for that to happen, the team's salary cap would have to go up, and teams would have to be able to pay for that. So that's the only feasible way that happens. And I've heard players don't want that. I've seen so many players say they don't want that because it hurts. It hurts the body. Like, football breaks you down. There's a reason why you can only play 16 weeks and then go into the postseason. I'm sorry. So I just don't think it's feasible. And I'm a big fan of football. So as a fan, I would enjoy more football, but I understand that it's not feasible for players to do that without at least more compensation for it, which is probably not going to happen either. What do you think?
Well, not to mention that, but here's the thing. In sports, we've had so many regular seasons become less and less meaningful. Like in the NBA and NHL, the regular seasons have meant so much less than they used to. And baseball plays 162 regular season games, and you see guys mail it in some days. Football is the one game where you have 16 games, and most of the time they're important. You're just barely bordering on some teams that pack it in a few weeks early or something like that, but usually they're still playing hard up until that last week. If you make it 18 games, you're threatening making teams possibly step out, and they could be out of it even sooner, which means that you could have less games that are impactful. And while I understand people are still going to watch, I also am concerned about losing 2 preseason games, and you might not be able to get a proper evaluation of some guys. I think 3 preseason games would be good. I think 4 might be a little much, but I think 2 is not enough. So I'm not in favor of this move at all.
Yeah, I like the idea of 3 preseason games. I've always felt like the 4th preseason game was just to get your starters in there for 2 snaps, and then you get on with your life, bang, bang, you're done. So the 4th preseason game is kind of useless. So would you be opposed to adding 1 more regular season game at the expense of 1 preseason game, or is that not a fair trade-off, just out of curiosity?
Just personally, my OCD with the records, I'm so used to the records knowing exactly what they are. I don't like the idea of not having a 500 team. I think it's the perfect symmetry of mediocrity, and I don't want that to go away. I'd prefer to have 2 more games as opposed to 1, but that's just, I'm weird like that. I know they'll never take away a preseason game without adding a regular season game, so I get why that wouldn't happen. But I just wish it would be 3 weeks of preseason and then give everyone a bye week before the regular season starts. That's what I would like to see, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, probably not, no.
We touched on the lockout. Speaking of a potential lockout, there's a ton of other issues that could be leading to an extended one with the upcoming CBA expiring soon. Players have extensively been choosing to sit out mandatory mini camps and other team-related activities, or even, like Le'Veon Bell, the whole season, due to wanting long-term financial compensation. Jadeveon Clowney, Robbie Gould, and Darius Slay, and Damon Harrison are among those names. That's led to some to believe that fully guaranteed contracts could be an issue that is discussed as well, not to mention removing testing for marijuana, having less mandatory off-season team activities, and of course the 18-game season we've already covered. So that being the case, it really seems like there could be a ton of issues going on, and I don't know how long of a lockout we could have on our hands. I think it's possible we miss more than just the Hall of Fame game, which we saw almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's so much that players want changed. There's so much that fans and actual NFL spokespeople want changed. It's going to be, unfortunately, probably bad for the fans and stuff, because it's probably going to go, like you said, past the Hall of Fame game, because there's just so much to get covered. No, the players aren't going to want to sacrifice their ability to sit out and stuff like that. It's just going to be rough. It's going to be rough to reach a middle ground. I I think the players are going to break first because these are the guys that need money and stuff. So, like, I feel like they're going to break first, but it's still going to be drawn out.
If the players were smart, they'd start saving money now so that they could live off it for a while and fight the good fight, but I'm not sure that they're going to.
I just don't believe many NFL players are smart. See Le'Veon Bell.
Speaking of not so smart decisions in the Jets, the Jets decided to fire their general manager Mike McCagnon right after the draft, and have since hired Joe Douglas a couple days ago to succeed him, which is just a ridiculous move when you're firing a guy after the draft. But right when you think you've seen it all, the Texans do it as well, and they fire their general manager. So what's going on? Is this what we do now?
Apparently, I mean, this happened 2 seasons ago with the Panthers, where they fired David Gettleman in July. It was like that was even worse because it was all full. Like it was about to be football season returning in less than a month, so that was bad. But apparently, this is just a thing now. Like teams are like, "Well, you drafted for my team, so you're not good enough to work for my team anymore. Goodbye. You're not good enough at controlling the team, but we let you draft anyway." So, like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I feel like if you're going to fire a guy, you gotta do it before the draft, before you let them make all the decisions, like, as big as drafting. Like, that's, like, what? How are you gonna let a guy that you wanted to fire draft for you? I don't know. I find that stupid.
Yeah, I really don't get that. I do not get that at all. Let's see here. You mentioned to me that Broncos cornerback Chris Harris Jr. finally got a contract, a pay raise, really not really an extension per se.
Yeah, he got that Antonio Brown pay raise, like when Antonio Brown went to the Raiders and they just gave him more money. Chris Harris got the same. He stays on the same 1-year contract, but will now receive $12.05 million instead of the measly $8.9 million he was supposed to get in 2019 for the type of corner he was. So he's getting more money. So the cornerback market might be shifting upwards for the first time in like forever. It feels like the quarterback market has like stayed the same for so long.
Defensive lineman Muhammad Wilkerson of the Green Bay Packers was arrested for drunk driving last month. Formerly of the New York Jets, wouldn't be surprised to see a suspension coming for him for violating the personal conduct policy at some point this offseason.
Yep, he's definitely. I don't get what these players be doing. Again, players are not that smart.
Former University of Pittsburgh kicker Chris Blewett, a very unfortunate name, was cut by the Chicago Bears today after he and 2 other field goal kickers, so all 3, missed 40-yard field goal attempts. That's not good. That's a rough day. But Blewett's getting the worst of it by getting cut.
Yeah, the Chicago Bears are they really need a kicker. I know that they want Robbie Gould, but, like, Gould hasn't, like, moved. He's franchise tagged by the 49ers. There's nothing happening there. They're kind of in trouble in the kicking department right now. Maybe they'll bring in Matt McCrane. Who knows?
Oh, I forgot about Matt McCrane already. Investigators have determined that the broken arm that Tyreek Hill's son suffered was actually accidental. But before people get the idea that Tyreek Hill is going to be coming back, remember that Hill and his fiancée Crystal Espinal have admitted to spanking the child. Remember, Adrian Peterson lost a season in the past for this, and Ezekiel Elliott was suspended 6 games for something he was never convicted for as well. So I'm going to say pump the brakes on allowing him to come back, and I still think he's going to get a pretty big punishment, especially when you consider this is the NFL's 100th season, and they're not going to want him tarnishing that with his kind of checkered past, if you will.
Oh, yeah. I think that I feel like Ezekiel Elliott was cleared way more than Tyreek Hill was, and Ezekiel Elliott still got a 6-week suspension, so I think that Hill's going to end up suspended. It might not be this season. It might be in 2020, but I think he's definitely getting suspended.
I think it is going to be this year because of the 100th season. I don't think they're going to let him play. That's just me, though. And then the last bit of news to get to, Kyle Rudolph, a guy that at tight end for the Minnesota Vikings everyone thought was going to be a cap casualty, has signed an extension, a 4-year to a total of $36 million. I just got to say this is good news because it means he's not going to New England.
Of course, yeah. Unless you're like the Giants and you say you don't sign people to trade them and then you do it anyway. But I don't think that the Vikings are that inept.
You like the move for them? That means they now have 2 capable tight ends, including Irv Smith Jr.
Yeah, I think that Kyle Rudolph should have been retiring a Viking. He's done so much for them. He's been with them through a very long time. I don't want to misquote say this, but because now I'm scared that I'm going to be wrong. But I feel like he's been there for the Matt Castle times and the Christian Ponder times. So if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I feel like he's just been around forever. So I feel like he should retire with the Vikings.
All right, and that'll wrap things up. We got a couple interesting things coming up for you with our next couple podcasts. We're going to release our initial 53-man roster predictions. Austin, you're going to go first, so if you could do me a favor, have that posted on the website by the time we record our next show, and that way we can just talk about it and just kind of what your thought process was with the guys that you picked.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so, and I was just checking because now I'm curious about Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph's rookie season was 2011 with the Minnesota Vikings. That was the year they were 3-13. Yikes. And Christian Ponder, you are right, was the quarterback. You know who else was a quarterback? He started 6 games with the team, was one Donovan McNabb.
Oh my God, really?
I honestly did not know Donovan McNabb played with the Vikings. I remember he went to Washington for 1 year and wasn't very good. I don't remember him being in Minnesota. I completely forgot about that.
Me neither. I remember Christian Ponder, and that's about it for that year.
Yeah, Christian Ponder was another one of those quarterbacks that just was not very good.
No.
Man, oh man, 4-year career, 14 wins. Huh. I guess he did have a couple. He had one solid year, but... Well, anyways, we're running long, so let's wrap this one up. It was great to talk to you, Austin. It has been a long time, but it's good to be back, and we're just over 6 weeks away from the start of training camp. It'll be here before you know it, and we'll be right in the thick of Steelers football once again. With the Stanley Cup wrapping up tonight and the St. Louis Blues victorious over the Boston Bruins, besides the NBA Finals concluding within the next few days, we'll just have baseball until then. I know you're thrilled.
Oh, yes. I love baseball. That is my favorite sport. I wouldn't rather watch paint dry or anything. Yay.
Until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.